Hi there, I'm talking about toxic labs. And in this episode, what to do if you find yourself in a toxic lab. Now this is my third video on this topic, and I'll put the link to the other videos in the description. In the other videos I talk about what toxic labs are and also why you should avoid them, and then also how you can recognize them. But now, for whatever reason, maybe you didn't see the warning signs, you are in a toxic lab. Now this is a really difficult situation and there is no really good solutions to that, but here I'll offer some advice and hopefully it'll help you. First of all, I would say talk to others very carefully, to people that you trust in that lab in which you're in, to find out what's going on. Are you the only one that feels this way about the PI? Maybe there is a tiny chance that this is just a personal incompatibility with you and that PI. And that PI may otherwise be a decent human being. If this is the case, it may be bad for you, and in many ways it might feel the same way as if you are in a toxic lab. But then we're talking about a different situation. What we are talking about here is the lab being led by a toxic PI. And so basically, when you talk to others about that PI, you will find that a lot of people will feel the same way, because that is just the atmosphere being created in that group. So we're now assuming that you have determined by talking to some people initially in that lab that this is really a toxic lab environment and a toxic workplace. And this can mean a variety of different things, and you can look at, for example, my earlier video if you'd like to see some examples of what this might entail. Now, you have already done also the first step. And I think it is very important to just talk to other people, and especially talk to other affected people in the same group. And this is very important because it may give you some support during critical times when you really need it. And you will basically be in a group of people that feel the same way as you do. And this also gives you the confirmation that it's not just you, it's basically everybody. And what that also means is this is not your fault. I say that again because it's very important. This is not your fault. It is also not your responsibility to fix. And I think it's mostly going to be futile to even attempt to fix the situation. Because you are not going to change people if this is a toxic PI, nor is it your job to do this. What has failed you is basically the science system in which we find ourselves that doesn't properly censor such people. And therefore, our system does not protect you from such bad actors. So we cannot really change the system in which we're in, at least not in this video. This will take a much longer time. So we are concerning ourselves here with what to do if you're finding yourself in this very bad situation. Clearly, the first thing to consider and the best option is to get out as soon as possible. This is going to be the best option by far. Just end this. Now, but this is of course easier said than done, and it depends on very many parameters. For example, your funding situation and many other points. At the most trivial level, of course, if the funding is from this lab, then of course you cannot just simply go to another lab because your entire funding is tied to being in this lab. Now, if it's more of a personal grant that you got, like a fellowship or a scholarship, or more like a departmental fellowship, then it may be substantially easier to, within the same department, maybe find another advisor, or to talk to the agency that gave you the fellowship, that awarded that scholarship to you, to see if you could be assigned to another lab group at this university or a different university. Even that, of course, will not be easy, because these other people will not know you. They will not immediately understand why you may want to move from a PhD or a postdoc so soon after you've started. And you will have a lot of explaining to do, but that will still be the best option. Now, if your funding is tied to this lab, of course, everything gets like orders of magnitude more difficult, because it means you will have to apply for other funding and you will have to apply for other jobs. But that is exactly what I would recommend. And that is perhaps easier for a postdoc, because some postdocs are relatively short. They can be just 12 months or 24 months. And so therefore it's actually quite normal that you start applying for another position if you're basically shortly after you've started working there, because you need to look for the next contract. And it's going to be much harder to explain and much more difficult to do, and it entails much more in terms of admin if you are in graduate school, because you will have to go through the same graduate school admission process again, for example, in some countries anyway. But the bottom line is get out as fast as you can, if you can, because that is by far the best option. So now what to do if you can't get out, at least if that's not immediately possible for a variety of reasons that we have already mentioned. Then what do you do? Now this is hard because somehow you will have to make this work for you. And this is risky because this is a situation that is very damaging to you, your mental health, your motivation, your productivity, and also your future trajectory. Now, there's a couple of points to consider here. The most important point is, and this is above everything else, you need to look out for yourself. That is the most important thing. And whatever you need to do, go on walks, go on meditation, talk to people, take up hobbies, whatever it is that you need to do to take care of yourself, you need to do it. Everything else is optional. You should seek out people in the lab who you can trust and with whom you can commiserate and who will support you in these difficult times, who can comfort you and vice versa. Because this will be very difficult to impossible to deal with on your own. I think that camaraderie that can develop will be very important to get you through the situation, at least for a time. The next point is also really invest maybe more than you already should in the network outside of this lab, your scientific network, because you're going to have to build a different support structure in science. Because remember, also later on you might need letters of recommendation, and you may not want to get a letter of recommendation from that current advisor, so it's very important to start building your own separate support structure. Now this is going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy because very often it is your PI that introduces you to people and makes these connections happen for you. But in this case, of course, this is unlikely to happen, so you're going to have to do it yourself. But this is also very important because you basically get another support structure outside, and also some of these connections that you make, for example, with other PIs and other labs, they can lead down the road to offers. For example, job offers or opportunities to go to a lab for some time. And that is also going to be very valuable in that situation. What you also could do is you could try to talk to your PI, at least after some time. I am not sure this is always going to be the best solution, because simply you're not going to change that person. If that person is basically a jerk, you're not going to make him a better person by talking to them. Also, you're not trained to do this. And it is, as I mentioned in the beginning, not your responsibility to really deal with the situation and make it better for you. You can try it though, at least then you can tell yourself that you have tried. And in some situations, it might actually do something, but I wouldn't pin my hopes on that one. Now, all universities will have various offices or help desks or support centers, depending on your status group for postdocs or for graduate students, that you can also talk to. This could also be graduate student associations or postdoc associations. It could also be mental health hotlines or other counseling offers. Now, this will be probably very hard to go and seek out these people and get in touch with them, but you absolutely should, because they are actually the people that can help you professionally. They can counsel you, they can give you advice, and they can help you get through this. You can, of course, also talk to like the dean or the boss of your PI. I would not do that first. I would first go to these counseling offers to get help for yourself. And it is very unlikely that going to the dean will really change a lot, because there's a lot of inertia in the academic system. For example, if this is a super successful lab that brings a lot of third-party funding, I think people are going to be very hesitant to do something about it. And this is, of course, sad and wrong, but it is also the reality. So I think it is much more important to look out for yourself and seek help for yourself, rather than trying to fix the situation by going to the dean or whatever is the head of the particular school that you're in. Well, this is it. It's awful that we even need to talk about it, but I think the situation is more common than many people realize, and it is a sad reality of academic life. I am really sorry if you're in a situation like this, because you will be missing out on a lot of things, because often this PI-mentee relationship can be basically a lifelong connection where people always go back to their old advisor and seek for help and advice and career counseling, and you're going to be missing out on that. So it's just terrible all around. Of course, the best you can do is to try to avoid getting into these situations in the first place by being very careful during the interview and by asking some of the questions. You can watch that video that I recorded earlier for that to give you some hints in what you can ask. But if you find yourself in the situation, and remember, this is not your fault, sometimes you can just miss all of the various red flags. Maybe they were well hidden during the interview. The best course of action after that is just to get out of that situation again as fast as possible. Either way, I wish you all the best. And if you're affected by this sort of toxic workplace environment, I hope you can get out unscathed and as fast as possible. With that, thanks for watching. As always, please let me know in the comments if you have additional points to mention or what your experiences are on how to best handle a situation. I think I'd be very happy to read about that. And see you in the next video. Bye.